Hi, I will formally introduce, though we've been chit-chatting for a while now, because we all logged in early to make our acquaintances, but since we are live now on Facebook, so I will formally introduce my panel. Am I audible to all of you?
Absolutely.
Very much.
So we have with us today on Ungender, Deep Bajaj, who's the founder of Sirona Hygiene, and it's one of the most popular product is the PeeBuddy, which allows women to stand and urinate. It's a very novel concept. We'll talk more about this during this conversation. Sirona makes feminine hygiene products. Also with Sirona is Dr. Diksha S Chadha. She's a medical director at Sirona India, and she provides a medical perspective to their award-winning intimate hygiene products and social endeavors. Have I missed out anything? Diksha, no? Add to it if I've missed out anything. We also have on panel Kartik Johari, who's the VP Marketing and Commerce at Nobel Hygiene. Nobel Hygiene makes the Rio pads. They're the pioneers of the concept of adult diapers in India, is it, Kartik?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. They also make the Rio pads, and especially it's fascinating because I saw, I think a Radhika Apte ad, which was promoting the product, and it's for women with menstruators with heavy flow. So I thought that was really like something brilliant, which usually not many companies who make feminine hygiene products address that.
Correct.
So we're talking about several things. We are in the middle of a lockdown. There has been a lot happening in these 4 months, especially in the space of sexual and reproductive hygiene products and its access. And we want to sort of address how the lockdown has overall affected people who need access to these products. People who are in dire need, there are various kinds of people who need access to these products. Some are privileged to live in areas and spaces where there is access, easy access in cities and towns, where medical shops have been open and delivery has been regular, even in the middle of the lockdown. We are also talking about those menstruators who are not as, fortunate, who are not as in the organized sector, who do not have the same access. So all the people on panel with me today have a deep understanding of the ground realities, especially of how workplaces function, how the need for menstruators need for access to sexual and reproductive products work in a country like India, where access is also determined by layers and layers of privilege and economic, most importantly, economic status, and also workplaces, how they are integrating this need with access to talk about this, the larger conversation, right? How can we make SRH needs a part of like a broader conversation? How can we take it to as many people as possible? What are the things that workplaces need to do to make normalize conversation about these, these things which aren't right now in many places? Workplaces, I also want to, like, before this like enormous monologue ends, I also want to say a little bit about, how we define workplaces, because workplaces also mean households where our domestic workers, are employed. Workplaces also means hospital where housekeeping staff are employed. So we'll touch upon all of that, but to straight go into this, I will, start with Diksha maybe. So, in the last couple of months, what we realized was that the people, because you're a doctor and you will have like a far, intimate perspective of this is your work. There are the frontline healthcare workers who are round the clock, working towards providing relief and medical care to the people who are affected by coronavirus, and otherwise they often themselves do not have access to healthcare or the protective equipment they use, like for their PPEs, are not made to fit, say, women's bodies. So is this a problem that you've also come across, and how can the medical profession be more, have more of these conversations? What can we do to really address this?
Yeah, so I'll actually begin by discussing what is the real problem that women wearing these PPE.
Right.
And I won't say just doctors. We have a lot of healthcare workers. We have the
Nurses
nursing
too.
staff,
Yeah.
which is primarily female. And all of them, when they are wearing the PPEs, there are two main problems that they face in their daily life, which is one, it's extremely difficult to breathe, because you're wearing mask and then you're wearing so much of plastic and everything is airtight. And second thing, like you very correctly said, especially for females, these body suits are usually designed for a adult male. And a lot of times it affects the nursing staff particularly, because if the suit is not fitting correctly,
Right.
It can create a air gap with which the virus can enter. So that, of course, is one problem which they are facing. But talking about something which is related to the subject right now is, because once you've worn a PPE and there's such a shortage of PPEs, you cannot really use the washroom till your shift ends.
Right.
And a lot of my colleagues, also my friends, who are working in the COVID wards right now, shared this with me that it's a mess when you are on your period, and pads. You cannot change your pads if you're wearing a pad, even if you're wearing a
Correct.
tampon. It's an issue. So I suggested to one of my colleagues, why don't you try the cup during this time? Because it is less messy, and it can take care of your entire shift. And she did try that and she loved it. And not just that, I started hearing from other doctors. If you go to our Sirona Hygiene Facebook page, you'll see a video by a doctor, Dr. Hina Patel, who has shared her experience of wearing a cup under the PP. So a menstrual cup really solves that problem for them. And since then, we've been sharing it in our doctor circles, that to even share with their healthcare workers and nursing staff. In fact, at Sirona, we just started a project wherein we have now started training healthcare workers, the female staffs, the orderlies, and the nursing staff on how to wear cup, because
Right.
menstrual cup is something which it takes time to learn how to use.
Right.
So we just started with that also.
Right. Right. All very, very valid points. But I think the logical question is, say, for example, doctors who have COVID duties, right, on COVID wards. Why can't there be a period roster where you are allowed to, I've written about this recently, so a lot of doctors I've spoken to have raised this, that just a simple period roster, and which allows you to pick your shift basically on, say, first, if you have like a painful period, and in a PPE it'll always be painful. So isn't that something we should normalize?
It's Dr. Diksha's favorite topics. You can go on
Right.
and talk about it for
But
hours.
I do want to hear from you as well, because I'll tell you why, both Deep and Kartik, is because a lot of these doctors have also said that the roster makers are men. So it just doesn't,
Men bashing.
That's actually not, it won't always be true. In fact, majority places, I feel that, especially in the medical circle, and because I've worked in hospitals, I'm from Suffolk Hospital, most of the time it was women making these, rosters, because women are better at organizing things. So this is something which I feel very strongly about. And men don't like making rosters. This is one thing which I have seen in my circle at least. So that's actually not true. When I guess when the COVID situation started, it was more about the incubation period and how much quarantine time is to be given. Therefore, not much importance was given to this aspect, especially because we as healthcare workers really forget about ourselves. So
Right.
nobody actively
Absolutely.
thinking about this. Why not to make a period roster? Because at that point of time, it was much more important that let's cover all the shifts so that there is no shortage of manpower. So probably that was not on their minds once it started, and once it started rolling, then it was 14-day shifts. So because of that, maybe it was not included in that. But I'll definitely take this up with some of my friends who are on active duty and ask them why this is not done.
Right. So, both Sirona and Noble makes cups, I suppose?
No, we don't make
You
cups.
don't make cups,
Um,
menstrual cups.
The heavy flow pads, which we have recently launched, the first one in India to focus specifically on heavy flow.
Hmm.
That's actually a product I think that it's inspired from something called a maternity pad, which I'm sure Dr. Diksha would know about. And it's a specialized niche product that is used post-birth to absorb all the post-birth matter that comes
Right.
out. The quantum of flow is much higher as compared to a regular menses. We do make maternity pads as well. That is what the inspiration was for the heavy flow pads. And no cups there. But I'd definitely like to echo the doctor's point in terms of how
Yeah.
difficult it can be within
Yeah.
PPE. I remember reading an article, I don't know where, on Array, I think. They did a beautiful coverage and they spoke to women doctors and they said that, it's such a catastrophe when you come out of it because there are no sanitary napkins that are available that can absorb the quantum, for the full day, at least for a 9-hour shift. So I think these are exactly the problems that we are hoping to solve with our product.
Right, right. So, if we can get back a little to, the sexual and reproductive healthcare services during the lockdown and generally the whole concept of what is essential product and what is not. So, if you remember that, just when it was launched, when the lockdown happened, the circular that went out,
The list
that went out, menstrual products
didn't have,
wasn't part of
not a
it,
part of it.
right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of confusion कि ये खुला रखना है, नहीं रखना है, कहाँ से मिलना है, अगर मतलब we can't go out to get packet of pads. There were a lot of other things that were associated with it. So, for example, right to abortion, like safe abortion. Then unwanted pregnancies, also regular pregnancies and managing the scans and the medicines, also even doctor visit, like how you want to, like even now you can't go to a doctor like a hospital, right? So all of this and also the difficulty in accessing sanitary products due to lack of mobility, because not everyone, especially if you talk about young girls and women and not just in the cities, mobility is a big issue, right? For them to step out of their house and so my question is, how can organizations such as yours, what can they do to highlight these difficulties so that take this message to the government? Because clearly it is these difficulties have been felt by a lot of people. Women, even yesterday I was reading, a woman has lost her baby because hospitals now are just not equipped, right? So what can organizations like yours do to take this message to the government? Anybody, Kartik, you can go first, or Deep, you can go first.
Well, I'd say it all stems out from the need for having a dialogue around it. The more we talk about these issues, the more we make it into a dinner table conversation, the taboo around this will break. And that's what startups like ours, are trying to do. Noble that way with their adult diapers. I mean, the time at which they started it, nobody was doing it. It wasn't even a product, to be honest. So I think, that's precisely what is required across all genres. So for us in our menstrual cups also, it's not that we are the innovators of cups, but we are definitely amongst the first ones to start talking about a section of society whose need can be solved with that product. And see, it is not a pad versus a tampon versus a cup story. It's a choice. The choice needs to be available with the lady, and the choice can only be available when you're talking about it.
Right.
Even in this, so that's what we are doing, at least to make these topics, these issues, as a part of a mainstream conversation. It doesn't need to be packed in a black polythene and given away. It doesn't need to be something that only women will discuss among themselves. At workplace or at schools or at colleges, we will have to start talking about these issues. What can we do with the government? We are trying, at least at our end. So when the first list came out, and in this, I might allow you a little bit of men bashing, that, maybe that list, because a pandemic like this or an epidemic like this had never hit the civilization, at least in the last century. So people were not really prepared. So the first thing that came to their mind, they put it on that list of 10, 12 items that should be considered in essential, and they threw it out. But very soon they realized, and a lot of organization of our, at least we started writing, putting out, articles on this, on how this can be missed. This is so basic, and they were quick to add it. So and I don't know if the same thing was possible 25 years ago. To make such quick changes today. You have an issue, you can voice it out on social media. There are people who are willing to take notice. So to break it into two parts, at the organization level, we need to keep innovating. We need to keep making these topics as a mainstream discussion. Like Kartik perhaps has taken on heavy flow aspect of it. We have taken on some 10 other aspects of menstrual hygiene, whether it is rashes or pain. That's what needs to happen at the corporate level. And at the social level, we have to ensure that if there is something that we feel is missing, we need to voice it out.
Right. Kartik?
No, very much agreed with Deep. I don't think he's left many points to tackle. I'd like to reiterate that, yes, initially the items were omitted, but the government was very receptive to feedback, when we approached them with it. I think adult diapers were one of the items which are not there on the list. And if you can paint out the situation of an 83-year-old paraplegic who's in home, he has no other option but to use an adult diaper. So in that situation, I think the reaction came in fairly positive. Baby diapers, I think, are a base level reality. I think everyone clicks in. But yes, for menstrual hygiene and for other incontinence related hygienes, it's usually an afterthought. Again, in terms of companies as well, I'd like to echo what Deep said. We consider ourselves and everyone else, including Sirona, including the market leaders, as little content houses. You are there trying to have a discussion with which you can add value to your consumers. You can only interface with X number of people that you can. I think the best that any organization can do is to improve the perspective and add more value to the people you're already engaging with. If you bring them a poignant enough message, if they resonate with it strongly enough, I think it's incumbent upon them to carry it ahead. And we've seen numerous examples of that happen. But the moment organizations like us stop talking or even stop trying, I think that will be the true death of any progress. So not to toot our own horns by any means, we're all trying to do the best that we can. And we all hope that we were capable of doing even much more.
Right. So just a very interesting thing that, I noticed that when you say male bashing, so not to pick on that, but why do you think that there's like the ground reality? It's not about male bashing. It's just that when a lot of women's bodies and a lot of people who menstruate, and the policies are made by men, what product reaches them are largely made by men. The people inside the family who control the finances are men. Whether I want to change into a cup or not, I have the privilege and the right to, decide that. But it's sort of a reality. So I think this positive thing would be, if there are so many men involved in these, then they should be allies and they should be involved in the conversation.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely, and I absolutely agree with you on that. And that's the reason I think why we're doing what we're doing. I think all of us here. We do feel the need for this change, and it'll only happen if it's inclusive. And that's why we have to break the seriousness around this whole. So it's not a feminist, it's not a man versus a woman sort of a dialogue anymore. I think it's everybody on the similar page. You please have fun while you're trying to solve these problems, but solve them. Like in Kartik's case, I know his company because my grandmother. I mean, we used their adult diapers for her, and I was the first one to suggest it, because my grandmother didn't know back then that there are now diapers available for adults. So I think within my house at least, at least in my house, it wasn't something where it was a taboo topic, and that's why perhaps I was able to do something in this field. I mean, we were just scratching the surface. But no, you can absolutely go about do men bashing. We deserve to be bashed. But
I don't think we all don't need to be apologetic, when you're trying to talk about a topic like that. The fact when you said that, you have the privilege of choosing which pad or cup or tampon that you use, I think, again, that as a Facebook live conversation from two of the biggest metros in India, it's a privileged freaking conversation.
Of course. Internet is a privilege. Of course.
Correct. Absolutely. If you were to go and try to talk to a father in Indore and, try and convince him about the importance of menstrual hygiene and to let his daughter have the opportunity to try a cup, or any other product, he would be aghast at the conversation in the first place.
Very true.
Something about, we are going to keep coming back over the course of this hour again and again to this point that base level conversation is truly the first step. We, with our communication, which we released, like you mentioned with Radhika Apte, we use the metaphor of a balloon to show the uterus, and we showed blood dripping, and we've received complaints on it. And we are now a little bit of a contention as to how to go ahead on TV with it. But even in the complaints, men have written in and women have written in. Women have written in saying that, how do you expect us to have this conversation with our family? It makes us uncomfortable to see this ad.
Right.
Now, it's very easy to again say that men should be the first one to bear this conversation. And as I agree, there is certain responsibility on us. But look at the state of affairs when a woman herself is ashamed to bring this topic up in her own family. This needs to go far beyond who can start the conversation in which household. And as a society as a whole, to take one bold step. That is what is needed.
No, of course.
And I agree.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I also want to, because you mentioned this, and it's very interesting that, and what you mentioned is really conditioning, and women are as conditioned sometimes in, patriarchal thoughts as men. So I would really like to, sort of go through some of the, what sort of, you work with this technology all the time, and you go to, the stakeholders all the time, people who use. So especially like Diksha, if you would want to, share some of the stories, do you still see and face and hear stories of taboo? Do you still, people are hesitant about using a cup because it's invasive? And, I've come across several people who've said that I am not going to use a cup or let my daughter use it, for example, because uski shaadi nahi hui hai yaar abhi. So are these some conversations you hear on a daily basis?
Absolutely. I'll circle back to that because I really was waiting for my turn to talk about something which is very close to my heart. The topic about please do. Thank you. How you talked about how access to healthcare, especially for women seeking abortion or pregnant women, how we as a company can tackle that, and how we can initiate a conversation about it and help government in looking at the topic, So I just wanted to mention what we at Sirona have done. We have done two things basically. One, which we did not start in lockdown, it was started way back, is we have a section dedicated on our website wherein women can just log in and ask the expert a question. And we started noticing how many questions out there were about contraception and how many queries were about MTP pill. And me personally, having worked in certain rural sectors of in and around Delhi, I've realized this is especially true in unmarried women. We rarely talk about this, but there are so many unwanted pregnancies, especially in unmarried women, and there's a lot of stigma attached with it. During this lockdown period, I was conducting a webinar wherein we were just talking about safe contraception with a group of young women. And after the webinar ended, one of these young women contacted me telling me that she had conceived. She was in lockdown with her parents. Her parents were not aware that she was in a relationship. She could not step out of the house, even though the hospital was 2 kilometers away. To get an ultrasound and to proceed, with taking an MTP pill. This was such a dilemma for me also. We reached out to certain NGOs and finally we were able to help her out. But we realized that this was an actual problem, and after that we conducted a study, and I would quickly like to share, the study is ongoing, but this is what we have found. 42.9% of our respondents so far have said that they have faced anxiety issues relating to whether they got pregnant or not by chance, even when they were using contraception. 14.3%, that's a big number, said that they have had unwanted pregnancy even in lockdown. Out of this, 16.7% said that they tried to seek medical attention for this unwanted pregnancy, to end it. 38.9% of these faced bias or judgment by the doctor herself, that they wanted to end the pregnancy. 16.7%, again a very big number, said that they faced a lot of difficulty in seeking medical advice itself. We as a company are trying to initiate the conversation around it, and we have realized, because we have been trying to reach out to government for other policy changes also, whether it is with the inclusion of cup, because our menstrual hygiene program in the country still doesn't have a menstrual cup under it,
Right.
in the basket of choice that we give to adolescent girls. So in order to converse with the government, we've realized that we always need evidence. We need to go with the facts. So we have started collecting those facts and figures, so that when the time is right, we'll reach out to them about these issues also.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So this is a study that you're doing at.
Yeah, this is ongoing. We are doing this with Google Forms, simple, plain and simple.
And when are you looking to publish this?
So till we reach a sample size of 1,000, I would say.
Okay, got it. Okay, coming to the yes, please. Sorry, go on.
Add in, I have two stories to share, both born out of research, both on two different spectrums of menstrual hygiene. And I would like to reiterate that all of these are metro-based stories in an affluent, educated household. Where on one end we have a woman who is so tired of existing solutions, and she suffered from PCOD, and there was nothing that worked for her. Her solution was to staple 4 pads together inside her undergarments. So where is hygiene when you're using 3 safety pins or bobby pins in order to affix the pad so that it doesn't move? That is one spectrum. And the other end of this, again, is in a post conversation when we placed the product, and when my team went back to have a conversation with this individual, she was ecstatic at the product. She said, wow, I don't have to now clean like 10 pads every day. And my team was all women, and they were stunned. They were like, what do you mean clean pads?
Yeah.
So she's like, no, I can't throw soiled pads. So over the course of the day, I have to collect 10 used pads, wash them the next morning, leave them to dry in the restroom, come back the next day in the evening, and then throw them out after they are wrapped. This is in Mumbai, in an urban, educated, affluent family. So let us not even go to tier 2, tier 3, where I'm sure there are way more drastic examples. But even now, in these little...
I want to understand why though. Like, Kartik, I really want to understand, why is...
It is considered ashudh. You can't throw things soiled with your bodily fluids in the common waste of the house. So it's your prerogative to clean those products up and then dispose of them. I mean, we like to call ourselves a disposable hygiene. But, if this is happening in one of your main pockets of literate India, what really is happening in interiors,
So there is a conversation. Basically, there's a complete, from this story, it's so shocking. Like, I would say there's a communication breakdown, like completely between family, between when you first learn about your body, and between, how that communication is filtering down to people who are just, say, for example, discovering their bodies.
No, very much. Ritu, if I were to ask you a personal question, have you discussed with your friends or colleagues on how you dispose your pads?
I have, but then I'm not the right person to ask this question.
Exactly. Right? When I was discussing this with another team of 12 women who I was in conversation with, one of them very meekly raised her hand, and everyone looked at her. They've been working for 6 years together, day in and day out. And they had no idea that this practice is done by one of our colleagues in our home even now. And, then they clustered close to it and like, oh my God, we didn't even know it. But this is the level of ineducation that exists,
No, I won't say this is ineducation. I mean, I think this is something which is so deeply embedded in our culture now. Pure blood being impure. One thing you said about menstrual cup was that, how it takes away one's virginity. This is, of course, a very common myth that we are trying to break. The second one is that how will I touch my blood? Because when you're using a menstrual cup, you happen to touch the blood also. You will have to. And there's such a taboo around it, around touching menstrual blood, that it's impure. And it's every session that I take, whether it's in the rural places or whether it's, in the educated sectors, we have to tell them that, this is the birthplace of life itself. This is not blood, this is tissue which is coming out. It could have been the birthplace of a child, right? So what can be more pure than the origin of life itself? And with Kartik sharing one surprising fact from the educated sector, I would like to share some surprising facts from the rural sectors. Because we through our social projects, we were able to reach out to rural outskirts of Jaipur recently last year, wherein we were trying to convert, as we say, cupward adolescent girls to menstrual cups, and we discussed it with them. And I'm telling you, I was pleasantly surprised. At least 14 to 15% of them were already aware what a cup was, and they were very happy to look at the cup. They were very happy with the idea that they'll no longer need to buy a pad. Because financially, a lot of times these girls do not buy pads or wear them for long hours because the pads are expensive for them. So the idea that a cup would last them up to 5 years or longer if they maintain it, this was very appealing to them. But then they told us something. They said, "आप हमें मत समझाइए, आप ना हमारी mothers का एक session ले लीजिए." And we were very fortunate that we were in that area for 2 days, and next day we happened to take a session with their mothers. And now, this is a gang of women who are in their ghungats, and they were using cloth. They were some were even inserting the cloth like a labial fold. And when we introduced the idea of a cup to them, they were sold. This was the most surprising thing I faced in my life, and we gave them these cups, and we have had 100% conversion there in those moms. Now these were women who were refusing to shift from cloth to pad, and they made the shift to cup just like that.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned this, because sorry, Deep. Yes.
No, I think I just wanted to just add that I think the challenge is more with the educated lot and the ones who are in the cities, because I think there any change is not very I would say widely accepted, or let's say instantly accepted. This Dr. Diksha mentioned about Rajasthan. We're doing a similar project in Malawi on our menstrual cup, the Sirona cups, and adolescent girls are super fast to take, because see, that's the first piece of information today. Your information about pads, tampons is because of whatever your mom's told you, and now it's 10, 15, 20 years, and that's become a reality today because it's been said so many times over. It's perhaps a similar space where tampons were in the US in 17s, where inserting a tampon was also, saying no, it'll again impact virginity. Right. And then it changed, I think, and that's where the change will start to happen here. So in rural, I would still believe that while the state of affairs is very appalling, it is worrisome when it comes to menstrual hygiene. But I think they would still adopt faster to the modern measures as opposed to urban, who have discretion, right? I mean, they would reject anything new, perhaps because they're just conditioned to the status quo. Right. Yeah, and that's where education perhaps would help. And
of course, like with more education, with more awareness comes, you're realizing your rights to access to certain things. I really love that you mentioned the menstrual cup incident, because that I was coming to that you have the PeeBuddy, you have the Rio pads for heavy flow. There are several ways in which companies such as yours are trying to revolutionize the way menstruators bleed. But I did a survey on Twitter. Not a survey, like I tweeted out once saying that Indian body sizes are all kinds, and there is no XXL pad in the market, right? So we, like, companies which make feminine hygiene products really don't put much thought into what is the need, for especially to fit Indian bodies. Now that you spoke about the cup, I would also like to ask all of you that. Currently, I think there are 2 or 3 companies which are making the XXL pad, and all of them are expensive. This is not a product you can use on, on a regular basis. And for people who do not have that kind of, access to such things, and it's not easily available, by the way. The popular brand that makes this is not easily accessible. It's not stocked in all medical stores. So the same thing for cups, right? So even if you see now, I'm glad that it's finding so much acceptance. Cups are finding acceptance dire dire, but largely India uses the disposable sanitary pad, right? And all surveys show that's the product that is mostly used, and we have to ask why, because that is also the cheapest product right now. Cups are not cheap. So how can companies such as yours, make sustainable, cheap, and also at the same time easily accessible products which can basically revolutionize people's lives? For say a person who works outdoors, it's in
Well,
all unorganized sectors, long hours. So what can you do to?
I think by just introducing these products, so the whole country here, before we spoke about women standing in peeing, were used to wiping the seat, making chairs, or holding it in. And I mean, so far about 2 million PeeBuddies have been sold in the country, which means so many women have taken to change. Similarly, in the case of cups, what we need to do is talk about alternate products. So when it came to and because we're a problem solution company, for dirty toilets, wiping the seat is not the solution. You stand in pee, stay away. That's why PeeBuddy. For period pain, we came up with India's first herbal period pain relief patch. We wanted them to do away with bottles. And similarly now for pads, women who wanted different solutions to PCOS, PCOD, heavy flow, we started talking about cups, and cups that way does help that solution. And we did introduce it at one of the best priced bracket. I think our cups at about $300, and cups would last you for up to, you use it properly, it can last you 10 years. Otherwise, you can use it for 2 years. And that way, we've taken the, a lead in trying to innovate around this space. However, on the triple XL pads, and Anand Kartik would be a better person because he's manufacturing them. In India, we are still the biodegradable version of it, so the cost is way too high. It's economies of scale. Yeah. The more people buy it, the demand will fulfill the supply gap, and that's my take. What we can do is we can try to subsidize, but beyond a point, how much do you absorb as a cost? I think that's.
But Deep, has there ever been a market survey? Because, whether there is a need for a, say a triple XL pad or cheaper.
Absolutely.
Like cheaper.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, we don't need to educate women. Let me tell you, you don't need to really spread awareness. Today with digital being here, yes, in offline stores, you would need to have enough awareness to be spread. And that's what Kartik's company is doing. We're doing it the hard way. But if you really look at digital today, menstrual cups, we've converted about 300,000 women in India to our cups in the last couple of years. Did we do much advertising around it? No, we haven't. They already know what they want. Do you need a survey? What you need a survey for is, do they need better options? The answer is yes. Now, those solutions, unless you give them options, they would not know. Kartik's one product, that way, the adult diapers, gave birth to one of our products, the adult diaper disposal bags. That way, some of our customers started talking to us that, how do we dispose of these? So we came up with these oxo-degradable disposal bags. If we had done a study, is it large enough a market? No. Is it a market? Yes. Similarly for cups and for triple XL pads. And that's why we have them. Women do need them. And yeah, we have multiple services. Dr. Diksha is champion of service. Dr. Diksha, do you want to throw some figures?
Have them in front of me, but to answer this, I think the more research, more research, like you said, in making pads sustainable for the environment also and financially. So whenever we use the word sustainable, we use it in both the brackets. It should be financially sustainable and environment friendly too. So I think we are yet to have the perfect product. I think maybe I am waiting to hear from Kartik how this can be done.
I really love one thing about Kartik's product is your company's product is because often we forget to talk about men in this conversation, and incontinence is something that men don't talk about because a lot of stigma attached to it. True. And especially if you are at an age where you are mentally sort of adjusted that this can't happen to me and this shouldn't happen to me. Correct. So I just love that part of this conversation was also about that.
No, very much. From a manufacturing perspective, being the largest scale manufacturer of disposable hygiene products in the country, we have 10 machines already, 2 more coming in this year. In India, for every product, there's always a tremendous downwards pressure on price across categories. So if you're talking about a market leader product right now in sanitary pads or napkins, you're talking about a price point of maybe 4 or 5 rupees per piece. In terms of manufacturing excellence, we are there now. It's not that there's some secret tech in the back room that no one has utilized, to drop the price by again another $2 on top of it. Companies such as ours in the disposable hygiene space, we would be the first ones to rise to the challenge and say that, okay, if there is any possibility for us to make the product more compostable or to make it at a lower price, we have no problems in doing so. I think the market leaders have done a fantastic job in trying to innovate at this price point so that you can drive mass market adoption of said products. But if your question is how much lower can we go, I think that's a never-ending proposition. What is truly needed, and like I said, we'll keep coming back to education on this, is for us to create an ecosystem wherein we can talk about these solutions with women, with girls, when they're approaching menarche, and then try and let them make an informed choice without society bearing down upon them saying that, no, this is correct or that is correct. In terms of manufacturing excellence, I think everyone's doing a great enough job as it is. Some of the most successful examples wherein you have recycled used disposable hygiene products, and they exist in UK and other parts of Europe, is this takes a synergist movement wherein you have to involve NGOs, you have to educate the public, you have to have the government involved. Something so basic such as waste segregation is still a huge challenge in a country like India, right? But it's one of the first and foremost steps that a country needs to take in order to get to the latter steps where you can sort these other things out. There are roads that exist even in parts of Bombay that have been made from recycled plastic, and they've lasted for like 5-6 years. Have we scaled that technology to its limit? No, we haven't. Have other countries done it? Yes, they have. So there are solutions which we can holistically deploy, but I think if you're going to look at a company or just companies as their prerogative to do it, I think that's a bit unfair. We already are trying to make the best possible product at a best quality at the best price, and at the same time trying to educate our consumers about how best to use it vis-a-vis against other products, etc. So we will need help.
Right. So if I may interject, like why you're talking about the cost and how low can we go really? So I want to put this in context of what is happening in a large part of India, especially during something like a pandemic or say cyclone and floods.
Right.
Because whenever such things happen, families always prioritize food and other essential over sanitary products.
Right.
Because if you have money to buy essentials, food always will be prioritized over sanitary product. So then it becomes like, it's a huge responsibility then. How can we make them not choose, right? And how can we give products at a cost which will not pinch? And I don't know, because there are a lot of organizations which actually sell those like 23 rupees that what are the Sathi pads? I don't know.
There are many, but Ritu, then the question is, what is the right cost? At the end of the day, is 23 the right price, or is it 44, or is it 100? I think it'll vary from family to families. But if the industry has to go forward, innovations will have to come in, and innovations cannot come in cheap. They can get better with time. So when the first pack of PeeBuddy, which is obviously women standing in pee, came out, the per funnel was 20 rupees. Because rejection rate was so high, the demand was so less. And we're trying to bring it back, and we're bringing it down. But is it for every person when any such of this epidemic? It's not really. But it's for those who are suffering from the problem, who can afford the solution. If you're really thinking in a very idealistic way, we as a corporate, we exist to make profits. We do plow back those profits for our paid forward programs. Right. But we have to make money. We cannot be just dependent on grants. And we make money when customers pay us. If it is at the social level, then we can absolutely see governments help. Now, I think UK has done. And yesterday, I think New Zealand, I think another country has just gone ahead to say that pads are absolutely free for women.
New Zealand did that.